This choosing beggar was given free rent and food for 3 months, but when his generous friends return to his abandoned room, they find something so disturbing they will never speak to him again. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the show. The cast. Me, hubby, choosing beggar, who I will call Kay. Alright, so this happened about 3 years ago. I got this book called The Go-Giver as a wedding present, and in it, there was this nugget of wisdom that basically said, give what you have. It doesn't need to be money to help. And I got this idea into my head for something like a fostering dogs program, but for my friends who are having a rough time. Kay was my first and only attempt at this. Kay at the time, supposedly working 50 hours a week, making $10 per hour as a prep cook in a big city about an hour south of hubby and I. I've been into the culinary industry since I was 18, so by this point I had a few connections and knew my way around the job market. We also happened to have a spare room. We invited Kay to come live with us. We had some stipulations though. You have to be actively looking for work if not working. You don't need to be our maid or anything, but if you can help with dishes and let the dogs out now and then, we would appreciate it. Don't bring your addicted friends over. Don't bring addictive substances into our home. Between 10 PM and 6 AM, keep the noise to a minimum. No smoking. It's in our lease and we can be evicted. In exchange, Kay got to live in our guest room rent-free, free utilities, free meals and groceries, both my husband and myself getting him interviews at our respective jobs, the ability to save up to move into his own place without spending money on rent or groceries. Oh, and we helped him get his license. We set his foster time at 3 months. He claimed to be super hardworking, and I'd known him since high school, so I believed him. Right before he moved in with us, literally the night before, he claimed that his 2 best friends came over and forced him to spend his $1,500 worth of savings for the move on addictive substance, so they partied all night. He was going to use that money to get a U-Haul to move up to us. Instead, we ended up paying for the U-Haul. He seemed very distraught, so I reached out to those friends on Facebook and told them basically that he was struggling to get on his feet, and if they were his friends, they would be supportive of that and not be forced to spend money on things he doesn't even do. Oof, I was naive. The friends apparently got really mad and cut off contact. He didn't know why. A month in, he brought it up and I mentioned that I'd reached out. He lit into me and said that was a mean and heartless thing for me to have done. I'll agree it wasn't my place, but he was playing such a good victim that I genuinely thought he needed someone to stand up for him. In the first month of him staying with us, I tried to get him hired at my job, plus 2 other friends' restaurants. He blew off all 3 interviews. My husband got him to an interview at his company. Kay showed up without his resume. A month and a half in, I gave him a new deadline. You need to get your resume done and printed so you can start looking for work. His response was that I was putting too much pressure on him and it was triggering his anxiety. He had 3 months total, and he had just been sitting on his butt for half of that. Then I started finding weird things. He was supposed to help with gas since his parents were sending him money when we had to drive him around. He inexplicably never had any handy. Then I started finding his stash of beer cans that he was hiding in the backyard, along with all his cigarette butts. I confronted him about it and he just doubled down on the lies. At 2 months, I started hearing from a mutual friend all the crap he was saying about us, how apparently our rules were too much, that in telling him he shouldn't be drinking so much while unemployed because that would make his depression worse, we were militant, in telling him he needed to shower more than once a month because he was starting to stink. And I mean stink. He also wouldn't brush his teeth. Riding in the car with him was agony. I was a jerk. In asking him to keep the noise down at night, I was akin to a Nazi. He also said I was basically a slave driver, asking him to clean my house in exchange for room and board. Asking him to wash dishes once a month equals slave driver? Who knew? I was ready to kick his butt out then and there for being so ungrateful, but then it all seemed to pay off. He got a job, a really good job, with a manager he seemed to love, with benefits and great pay, and room for growth. It was 3 weeks until his move out. Hubby and I started talking about how if we saw him turning things around, we'd extend his time and let him stay with us to keep saving since 3 weeks really wasn't that long. Then the hurricane hit. My dad offered to let hubby and I bring our dogs down to Miami to stay with him. His house, like ours, was hurricane-proofed, but his was way more comfortable to hang out in the aftermath. Kay swore he would help me put up the shutters, get supplies, and set up the house. Not financially, I just needed the extra hands for all the lifting. The day came and he slept all day. I got more than enough supplies for the 3 of us to have stayed there and been fine, but instead I was going to leave it all there with Kay minus 2 allergy-specific things for me. Kay threw a fit and started telling everyone who would listen that I was leaving him there to die. The hurricane didn't even hit our home. The power was out for 8 days, but there was 0 structural damage. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. We told him my dad wouldn't let us bring him, but he'd be perfectly safe there, and we were leaving him with cash and my husband's car keys, so he could evacuate if needed to, or we could drive him to a shelter before we left. He opted to stay behind. I finished getting the house ready. At one point, I came inside to talk to my husband about needing help with this massive marble table outside that belonged to the landlord. I wanted to get it into the shed. Hubby and I both worked out and were really strong, but together we couldn't budge the table. So Kay overheard that and he went out after us and tried to do it himself. He ended up dropping it somehow and it broke into 3 giant pieces. Didn't say a word to us. Right before we left, I went outside for a final check and saw it broken. I asked him about it and it was all just, no excuses. I told him that's part of the apartment and it would come out of our deposit. He insisted he'd pay for it. I said, with what money? Because he was always broke when it came to gas. He left the kitchen and came back with $200. I explained it was marble and at least $800, but that wasn't the point. The point was that he was just going to hide it from us and let us think the hurricane did it. I told him to keep his money. We left. After 5 minutes into the drive, he calls to tell me he's decided to hitch a ride with some friends evacuating to Kansas. I asked why out of curiosity for what changed his mind. He responded really defensively saying, "I don't have to justify wanting to live." True, but again, the hurricane wasn't even tracking to hit our area. It was going to be uncomfortable for a few days, but not life or death. Whatever, his call. I wished him luck and didn't think about it. The hurricane comes and goes. After about a week, we make our way back to our home. The moment we got into the house, I just had a feeling something wasn't right. Everything was exactly how we left it. Maybe a little hotter since the AC had been off for a week, but nothing huge. Just a gut feeling. I usually wouldn't have gone into Kay's room, but I just... my gut, man. So I went in. On the bed we'd loaned him was a box. On top of that box was another box. On top of that box was a third box. And on top of that box was a cage with a freaking baby ferret in it that was starving without water and had crap dripping down the 3 boxes onto the bed. I kicked into action. I got the ferret out of the cage and into my tub, without water in it because it was the only surface that was cool, and gave it some water. It was lethargic, but it was alive. Then I googled animal rescues and discovered a rescue that specifically takes ferrets. They gave me the address for a vet hospital to take it to, where they would pick it up. I took the ferret there. Then I called Kay. I told him that the next time he came to my house would be to get his crap. It was bad enough that he was lying to us, breaking promises, being a drunken deadbeat, risking us getting evicted, talking crap behind our backs, and generally just being an ungrateful piece of crap, but my line is animal endangerment. Apparently the friends he hitched a ride with were the cokeheads who allegedly forced him to spend all his money on them right before moving. Apparently, they told him they could either take him or the ferret. So he put the ferret somewhere high up in case the area flooded. It's South Florida. Do you have any idea how hot that house had gotten during the week of no AC or electricity? It was an oven when we walked in. And for that particular hurricane, people all over were getting arrested for abandoning their animals when they evacuated. We should have reported them. Instead, we got that animal somewhere safe and gave them the contact information for where to find it. They never called back for it. The ferret found a lovely home. He gave me this massive sob story about how he had nowhere to go, and me being me, I let him come back for his last 3 weeks. The day before he was supposed to move out, I said, "I haven't said anything because you told me to stop pressuring you, but your 3 months are over as of tomorrow. Will you need a ride to get to your new home?" He confessed that he'd thought we weren't going to hold him to the 3 months. After everything, there was no way we were giving him any type of extension. He ended up moving into a hotel. I did promise this story had a happy ending though. When he started with us, he was addicted to substances. He was working oppressive hours and had no transportation, and had an abusive roommate, made barely enough to pay his bills, and he felt like that was all life would ever be. When he left us, he had a great job with upward mobility, a strong group of supportive friends, he was going to AA meetings, and he was making more than he would have in Miami for at least 4 more years. He was in the hotel for 2 months before he got an apartment in a really nice area. He's been promoted to a manager at a steakhouse near our old home, and he's dating someone. The last time we spoke was a few months ago, where he apologized for how he handled everything and then thanked us. In his words, we saved his life. Lessons learned all around. I learned not to take other people's lives on as my responsibility to fix. He learned he had some serious growing up to do. And I like to think his friends learned not to leave ferrets in strangers' houses during hurricanes. So this all really starts 2 years ago, but to summarize, my significant other's little sister's boyfriend has been nothing more than a scathing leech on everyone in his life since I've known him. Jobless, penniless, couch cruising from SO's family members until he's worn out his welcome, and constantly dodging any and all responsibility and claiming himself to be the victim, no matter what. With all of that out the way, the latest escapade. SO's little sister is Jill, little sister's boyfriend is Jack. Jack was sick for a bit and having trouble staying at work and calling out a lot. Serious enough for his HR to put him on a FMLA, Family and Medical Leave Act. FLMA comes to a point for him to either extend it or go back to work. Jack decides to go back. Upon arriving at work, starts to feel sick again. Calls out while waiting for his relief to get there, emails his boss a resignation for him to effectively quit immediately. Of course his job fires him. Meanwhile, Jill had missed out on a lot of work because Jack would refuse to go to the hospital or doctor without her coming with him. Jill gets fired. Jack at that point had been living with me for 7 months as a roommate. I wasn't like the rest of my SO's family. Jack was on the lease with me, so he was locked in and liable. Bills all in my name, so I could cut and run if need be. I was sick of living with Jack. Never cleaned anything. No dishes, dusting, vacuuming, sweeping, picking up after himself, nothing. 2 weeks before she lost her job, I ran the idea by Jill that she could take over my half of the lease for $50, move out of her mum's and have her own place. No security deposits for anything. Just transfer all of my crap to them. Clean cut. Wash my hands of the mess. Flash forward. Jill had been living there for a week and I had moved all my stuff out when she lost her job. She had allegedly been fighting with her boss on getting her pay stubs for the apartment application for weeks, but now that's out cause no job, so I'm still tied to the lease. My SO and I agree to give them 2/3 the rent till they get jobs, thinking a month at most. Fast forward 4 weeks. My SO and I had paid 2/3 rent and my SO's mum paid 1/3. The apartment at that time had Jack, Jill, and one of Jack's friends living there. Everyone gets their stimulus checks on the 15th. Jack and his friends get their tax refunds. Jill gets a job. Jack's friend has had one. Jack is trying to get his job back to no avail. His boss called me. We're friends. Told me he'd never hire him again and told Jack this. Didn't faze him. Told them that all the expenses were on them for the remainder of the lease. End of June. I told all 3 of them. SO tells Jack and Jill. SO's mum tells Jack and Jill. Flash forward to yesterday. Me and my SO have been out of our old apartment for over 2 months. We've been living at SO's mum house to save up money to move out of the state. It's been amazing, being more or less on our own and away from all the drama. I've been asking Jack about bill money, seeing that they are in my name and the due date is coming up. No response. Jack and Jill show up to it's just so funny saying Jack and Jill. Show up to the house to grab some of Jill's stuff she left behind. Jack walks up to me working in the garage and asks, "Have you paid your half of the rent yet?" What? We told you 4 weeks ago that it was on you." "Crap, we are screwed. We're straight up screwed." Jack exits stage left. My face when those 3 butt hats had $5,800 between the 3 of them 4 weeks ago and don't have enough to scratch up $770 for rent now. The dude straight up gets ticked, saying that we promised to pay their expenses till the end of the lease, that they lost their jobs due to the virus, that we were attempting to take advantage of him for being nice and allowing us to move out. I told him that I didn't know what we were going to do. SO ain't giving them anything. SO's mum isn't either. As for me, my name is on the lease and rent is due today, so I don't know. Lesson learned. Do not put your name on the lease with someone unless you 100% trust that they will be able to pay their half of the rent, or unless you are willing to pay their half, which most people aren't. Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.